Platemark is a podcast about prints and the printmaking ecosystem. In every episode, we'll hear from people who occupy various roles in that ecosystem. I'm your host, Ann Shafer. I'm an independent curator, and I work to promote prints and printmaking through this podcast, through organizing fine art print fairs, and organizing exhibitions. The goal of the pod is to demystify the world of prints and printmaking, which can be technically challenging, and to demonstrate the range of opportunities to work in this charming corner of the art world. This is a show that takes you behind the scenes to expose the generous, collaborative, and creative people working to better the world one print at a time. Today's guest is artist Mark Johnson. I wanted to talk to Mark because he, for a very long time, assisted Krishna Reddy in his studio and in teaching at NYU. Krishna Reddy is an artist who perfected the fine art of simultaneous color printing, also known sometimes as viscosity printing. And there was an exhibition, it must have been spring of 2025, at the Print Center in New York, curated by Sarah Burney, that looked at Krishna's output and really showed him to be incredibly imaginative and super thoughtful. And part of the exhibition was a video that Mark made showing just how it works, how simultaneous color printing works. And it's just amazing. It's over on YouTube. You can find it yourself. But I just thought, God, we should talk to him. Because he not only can relay to you what Krishna's ethos was, but he also is an incredible artist himself and can really explain to us what the heck is going on with the process. All right, housekeeping. I identify as a cishet white woman, and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. Images that Mark and I talk about are over in the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. You can also hit the support and donate button over there and help me keep the lights on. All right, let's get rolling. Mark, it's great to see you. Thank you for coming on Platemark today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor also.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. You are the perfect person to talk to because recently you contributed a whole lot to a show that's at the Print Center in New York as we're recording this, which will be closed by the time this is published. Sorry, everybody. But it's a show focused on Krishna Reddy, who was your mentor and professor when you were a youngster and whose philosophy you embraced.
Yes.
If you're a regular listener to Platemark, you'll know that my long-term study was on Stanley William Hayter, who started the Atelier 17, and with whom Krishna was a good friend and co-director of the Atelier for a long time, and who developed this simultaneous color printing with Hayter and Keiko Moti. So you are the perfect person to talk to because I feel like you have the inside track and you can help us understand not only the technical parts, but also the philosophical parts that Krishna was so passionate about.
Yes. I studied with Krishna at NYU, and then a number of years passed, but then I started helping him in his studio informally, different tasks and projects. And then I started helping him proof some of his prints. He would, work on his plates for a while and wanted to get a proof. And then I ended up, just helping him out for 15 years and also co-teaching his color class because he got a little older and he wanted to keep going, but wanted a little extra support. So I feel like I spent a lot of time with him in terms of his teaching, but also his studio work.
When you're in the classroom, I've never really taught in that manner. I mean, I taught all the time in the study room at the museum, but I never was in a classroom at a university in the way that you were. When you're with Krishna in the classroom, was it a different relationship and feeling than when you guys were working in the studio together?
I mean, after I graduated and was, co-teaching with him, it was similar. I mean, he's kind of one of these people that is sort of the same no matter what context. And so we would have similar, he would talk to the students directly in the class, but in the studio it was more conversational in terms of the give and take and, working a little bit, conversing some.
I feel like there are people who turn on a teacher persona when they get in front of the classroom.
Yeah.
And they're, over the beer at home sort of thing is different.
Yeah, I don't think the case with Krishna. It was like very consistent across the board, in terms of what he wanted to communicate.
And did you teach just the color work with him at NYU, or was there other stuff you helped him with?
I mean, that was the main class. It was the color print atelier, he called it, which was a great class that he developed. So it was an advanced class for graduate students or undergrads that were seniors or advanced. But that he also wanted to open it up to working artists in the community. So he developed this hybrid class with NYU to allow students, adult students, professional artists to take it, for not credit. And so they would be the two people working together. And the energy was great because it would be students, undergrad, grad, people had been making art for 20, 30 years, but didn't really know that much about color printing. And it was just a very dynamic, wonderful experience, that sounded similar to Atelier 17, where there was just all the people, different ranges, kind of all working in the same manner, so to speak, the same level.
I did not know that. Oh, that's fascinating. There's so many parallels. I was lucky enough to see the Krishna Reddy show a week ago. I guess I was in New York, and Sarah Burney, the curator, took me around, which was lovely and delightful.
Yes.
And as she was talking, I was like, wait, that's just like Hader.
Yeah.
No, that's just like Hader.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
The thing that struck me was that Sarah said that Krishna hated to be thought of and called the master or whatever. Hader was the same way. Like, he never wanted to think of himself as, the lightning rod around which all of these artists were circling, but that's exactly what he was. And it sounds like that's exactly what.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard him say, because it was a master's program, like, masters, what does that mean? And he said, you put an MA or MFA on your shirt. He says, it means nothing. You're never the master. His whole philosophy is that you never wanted to, in a sense, conquer the materiality or the learning. It was always that it was in progress, and you always wanted to maintain that curiosity. So as soon as you say, I'm the master, I know everything, in his mind, then that comes to an end, or can, it lessens the curiosity and the discovery.
I think that's such an important approach to art and learning art in school as you go along, because I feel like there are people who set out to make a project and have it be finished and complete and blah, 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 and off they go and don't think about the journey and how important that part is too,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, that was the core, that's literally the core philosophy in terms of his approach, that you're in partnership with your materials, your world, your philosophy, the people around you, and it's all it's an amalgam of all that experience. And so again, like, if you're the master and you're dominating that, it's just a completely different mindset.
I feel like there are programs in schools that touch on simultaneous color printing, which is what Hader called it. You throw viscosity in there, but my memory of Hader was that his opinion was that every ink has a viscosity, so that was kind of not a good term for it.
Well, actually, Krishna told me, he wrote a book on the process, and he said he was somewhat reluctant to do it, but that Hader really encouraged him. He said, like, you really should do this. It's really important. He had written books on print, and so he said that Hader encouraged him, and then when it came time to title it, he said that Hader really was responsible or helped him really get the title, because they were like, what should we call it? And so his book is called Simultaneous Viscosity Color Printmaking, and that's probably why I use
got a little bit
those
of
two parts. Yeah. And that was one of the things that came up in the show and through discussions. It's like, let's come up, or what is the title? And I was like, I think it's too late. It's it's what I mean. It's taken on a life of its own. It's not like we could now impose a title on it.
Sure.
But so he said that Hader really kind of was like, give it a name. It should be specific, and and you define what it is.
Right. The thing that I really appreciated about both Krishna and Hader's work within this kind of sculptural plate, cool color, simultaneous color printing with this multiple viscosities of inks, was that it put forward, I think, in a really convincing way, this idea that the printing is just as important as getting the image into the plate. That in this scenario, they are much more equal halves than they are maybe, say, in a Peter Milton etching where you're, wiping it fairly tight with black ink and off you go,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key thing. And I pointed this out. I had to write it, or I was asked to write an essay for the catalog they put together for the show. And it was the same thing. It was like, what should I write? And I was trying to channel Krishna essentially. And that was that was the key component, was that the printing was as important as the plate making, and that together they create the final piece. So he would always say like 50% plate making, 50% printing. Obviously the percentages could be different, but that they were both equally important. Is before you were saying Hayter and all that, and Krishna is, it was about reproducing what was on the plate, a one-to-one. So you didn't want to experiment too much with the printing part of it. It was more, you wanted to get an accurate of a representation of what was on the plate as possible. And with viscosity and all the stuff that happened during the 50s and onwards, it's about the printing influencing also the end result, or being a player, a major player.
It was a long time before I saw one of Krishna's plates live and in person. I'd seen the prints go by, and I'm always doing the game that print people do, which is, how in the world did he do that?
Yeah, I call it CSI printmaking.
Exactly. Like, what the hell is happening here? And then you see the plates, and you're like, wait, just hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
So maybe we should start can you start at the beginning, and then we'll build up to what Krishna was doing? Because there's just way more going on in Krishna's plates than even Hayter's.
Yeah. And when you say the beginning,
well, I think,
what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So my promised deep dive to our listeners today is to fully understand what simultaneous color printing / viscosity color printing is, how it works, and how it came about, because it was a new, discovery in the late 40s, 50s, and then what artists have done with it.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding at the beginning is like through Krishna, because that's who I was with, and, he explained it to me. And so there was a lot of discussions about that, and he talked about that a lot to his students, about how these things come about. And, he was in Atelier 17 working, and he said that there was a climate of experimentation. Everybody was experimenting, and everybody wanted to push printmaking past its sort of historical representational, kind of usage, like we were just talking about. This is, obviously artists have been using it artistically for many, many years, but kind of pushing it into a new realm, So he said that energy was there, and Hayter was promoting that. All the people were there were promoting it. It's the late 50s. He said Paris, there was a level of freedom, or a desire for freedom, artistic freedom, philosophical freedom. So all that, was in the air. And Hayter was doing a lot of things with stencils and rollers, as with other people. So he said that, a lot of people were doing rollers and stencils and trying to think about ways of bringing color to the plate without having to do 4 plates. So that's the traditional way of doing it. Like, every plate is a color. That's very complex, abstract, takes time. And so this idea was like, could we bring everything to one plate, but still have multiple colors? So there's people who do printmaking, there's a lot of ways to do that. And so that was the energy. What Krishna did, his explanation of it, and along with all the other people that were there, was he had witnessed this, what he calls accident in the studio. It's there's a lot of different ways of looking at this. People have a lot of different stories. This is what he told me directly. He gave the story about how he was working one Sunday in Atelier 17. He said that was the day that the artist that ran the shop would work. So there was no students. It was just the artist. And he said he was working with his old French printer. And I loved how he described it. Old, this cut cape, the pouches. And he said he was very, very set in his ways. And he had some little tallow in his pocket that he would add to the ink. And he would give me this whole description of how set in his ways this guy. And he said he was rolling out these colors, again, like with the brayers. And mistakenly, there was some linseed oil on the table. And when he rolled it out, the ink on the roller didn't appear to stick where the linseed oil was. And he just took note of that. He said there was something there that was interesting. It acted like a mask or anyway, he was just saying there's something there. The old-time printer scolded him and said he was a messy printer and he didn't know what he was doing. And, so I think it's just an interesting dynamic where you say like the person who's sort of set in their ways and not open to new ways. He's sort of illustrated as it's a bit rigid, and that he saw this opportunity, and so he took that to Hayter and Moti and all the people that work in there, and he said they for years experimented every Sunday with what had happened there, and they started changing the viscosity of the ink and rolling and doing stencils and rolling some more. And Hayter's work, shows that. And Krishna started doing that right away with one of his early prints was Insect, which I think he said to me was the first one where he kind of really used all these components. Anyway, so then it just took off from there. And I think the difference with Krishna is he literally spent the rest of his life engaging with this idea and developing it. So in a sense, he gets a lot of the credit because it's just he spent so much time with it, So who invented it, how it got invented, I think is at this point to me less interesting than what happened with it, and how did it develop.
Yeah, I mean the three gentlemen always get credit together. It seems like. I mean, I've never said, "Oh, Hayter did this thing,"
Yeah, no, but I just mean like it's I just mean like it's hard to really pin down any like who invented Aquatint,
or photography.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you made a video for the Print Center for this show, the Krishna Reddy show, which is really illustrative, I think, and worth watching. I'll include a link in our show notes so that people can find it easily. It's also in your Instagram bio. But can you tell us like the order of the oiliness to you reverse it? I was like, wait, what's happening here?
I mean, so when the Print Center was putting the show together, obviously a core part of Krishna's professional career is this viscosity, developing viscosity. So they asked to make a video, and they said, you have 3 minutes.
Oh.
And I just thought to myself, how can I make a video about this process that's very dynamic and challenging to explain in 3 minutes? So I literally just channeled Krishna. So his first class that he teach color printmaking, viscosity printmaking, whatever you want to call it, he would talk about, the origin story similar to what I was talking about, but he would get into just the idea of changing the viscosities of ink. And viscosity is just the stickiness, how sticky the ink is. So that's like the term, it's the technical term for stickiness, if you want to, kind of put it into just basic language. So,
and it's usual to, when you scoop a little bit of ink out of a can, that it's super, super, super tacky, and it's very usual to add some oil to loosen it up. Right?
Yeah, plate oil, linseed oil. So again, exactly. So these are things that are happening already in the studios. And it's just a matter of like, what I said in the video was like, once you sort of see what can occur when you change the viscosities, then what they did was spend all this time trying to understand the parameters of that. And like I said in the video, just trying to say, if we mix these inks or if we change these viscosities, it's predictable, it's knowable, as opposed to when you take ink out of the can, one might be stickier or might be looser just because of the way they're formulated. The color, like yellows are generally looser than reds, and blues are very stiff generally in my experience. So they all have different viscosities just inherently. And so all that Krishna and Hayter and everybody was doing was just saying, like, let's put an amount in so we know what those viscosities are going to be. And then once we know that and we understand what happens when those viscosities interact, then we can predict that and we can use that in a kind of a controllable fashion,
Is there a way to test the ratio of oil in an ink other than seeing how fast it falls off your palette knife?
Yeah, I mean, there's the palette knife, but until you actually roll them over each other, it's hard to just predict it. But so what I did in the video was just basically show that concept, which is, so I mixed 3 colors, primary colors. One, I put a lot of linseed oil, and it's raw linseed oil, as opposed to cooked or plate oil. So raw linseed oil has no viscosity. It's like water almost.
Okay.
So when you put it into ink, it decreases its stickiness. It decreases its viscosity, so it's not as sticky. So I put quite a bit of linseed oil in the first color. That was yellow in the video. The second one was red, and I put a medium amount. This is the one that always is challenging for anybody, including myself. what's a medium amount, right? And that's the one always like, well, how many drops? And in the book, he tried to say drops. And it's really getting to know the inks you're using, getting to know what you're trying to accomplish, and then adding the proper amount. But I in the video, I mixed in some linseed oil in the red, mixed it, kind of got a feel for it. Then the last color was blue, and it's pretty much right out of the can. I didn't change it at all. So it's like the stiffest, most viscous, stickiest ink. I rolled them out on 3 little brayers, and then I rolled the yellow first, so that's the wet, very low viscosity ink. And I roll a red over it. And in the video, they don't seem like they're sticking to each other. So there's a solid yellow square, and then there's a red shape over that, and you're like, so initially you say, well, how does that happen? And I just taught a workshop as part of this exhibition also at Blackburn's, and I said I'll do the same thing I did in the video, and I did it, and it's like everybody thought I it was like a magic trick, And it's kind of interesting because you explain it, you see it, and it's still like, how is that happening? Like, it doesn't make sense. And so that's why in the video I showed, and Krishna did this all the time, he would roll the brayer back out on the glass. So he'd first roll them over on top of each other. They don't look like they stuck. So you say, well, they're not mixing. Then when you roll that brayer on the glass, they've mixed on the roller.
Yeah, I saw that.
So the upshot is the inks are always mixing. The question is, where are they mixing? On the plate, or are they mixing on the roller?
Yeah.
And that's cool. The only thing that's happening. It's like, so it's not like they're disappearing or they're not mixing or they're repelling each other. They're literally mixing. But the question is, where are they mixing?
It's crazy to watch because I've read a lot about the process and I've tried it out. We made some baby hater plates one time to try and figure out what the heck was going on there for ourselves, me and True. We were kind of guessing how it all worked, but I'd never seen anybody do like the straight, this is a square of yellow and this is the square of red over the top. And it was so great to see what really happens and the ghost that comes off the offset.
Because that's why, Krishna would show that in the first class, because what he's trying to do is he's trying to explain to you what viscosity is. What does it mean when you change the viscosity of ink, and then when you roll one on top of the other, are they going to mix or not mix? And where are they mixing? And so that's the first thing, but it's a flat piece of glass. It's flat. And so, again, like what I just told this class I taught is, if the plate is flat and you keep rolling over, where are the colors going to go, So that's the second part, which we can get to. But the first part is literally just altering the viscosity of the ink, and then they're going to react or interact in different ways, And once you have that information, you can say, well, how can I use that information on my plate, in my print, And the most basic way to do it is kind of use a mask, kind of like what's happening on the glass. You can just do that on a plate. You can have areas that have a high viscosity ink and a low viscosity ink, and they won't mix, and you'll have this pattern on your plate,
You could do like a whole monotype thing with just rollers of color over each other.
Yeah, complete.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in a way, though, that's what's interesting about it. It's like you were saying earlier, artists have changed the viscosities of ink, forever. If you're a painter, you're always changing the viscosities. You're adding medium in, you're adding linseed oil in, you're adding mineral spirits, and some are so your paint is stiff or it's loose or it's like watercolor. So everybody's always doing this. It's just when it comes to print, it's like, and you're like, okay, well, why am I doing that? What's happening? But the same thing's happening in painting. The same thing's happening in other areas.
But I love that the painters aren't asking why.
Well, I have to say, like, this is a little bit of an aside, but when the show was going, I said, I don't think we should talk about the technical part at all.
Oh.
I know it was important, but I just said, let's put it, I was like, I think it should go second.
Okay.
Because when you go, again, like when you go to a painting show, nobody's like, there's not palettes out, and people are like, well, how did you make this? But when you go to a print show, you got the plate and you have the videos, and, it's just as a printmaker, somebody who's done prints a lot, I was like, why does it need this extra level of explanation,
Because it's so much more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And people are interested, too. I found
exactly.
over the years.
Yeah. Every printmaker walks in the Krishna's show and goes, how the hell did he do that?
But I would contend that there's as much technique in painting as there is in printmaking, as in ceramics and sculpture, mold making. To me, it's all complex.
Yeah.
Or can be.
When you reverse the order on the glass palette to roll out the tightest one, the blue first, and then the red, and then the loosest one, the yellow, those overlapped. And
yeah, so when you reverse the order, so Krishna called it juxtaposing was the first one, so they appear not to be mixing. And the second one is he called superimposing or superimposition, so they would mix. Krishna primarily used the juxtapose method on his plates. Like that's really what he used. The colors separate out on the plates, and less the superimposing. But basically, let's say you wanted two colors to mix on the plate for whatever reason, and you rolled one and you rolled the other. If you didn't change the viscosities, maybe they might mix, maybe they might not. When you change the viscosities, you know they're going to mix, and so it's predictable. That's why it's can be beneficial even if you're not kind of using the whole Krishna viscosity, full blown method.
It's interesting because, Hayter would, I mean, not all the time, because when he got to the sort of open bit, drippy, droppy, policky ones, definitely was using this very classic, down into the trough and across the top. But earlier in, say, saying Personage or something, he's screen printing, so it's a different way of doing it, but he is overlapping these colors to, there's three colors on top of the black intaglio inked plate, and he's creating blues from the magenta and the green, he's purposely superimposing to get additional colors in the palette.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the change in viscosity just allows that to be a little more predictable.
Right.
I mean, the way that you think about it, it's basically the driest ink it has the most adhesion, so it's going to pick up the other inks, So depending on what order that's going to happen, and Krishna being very politicized, he would always joke about how the poor man would pick up from the rich man, or the rich man takes from the poor man.
Really?
So, yeah, it was funny because he would say that the driest ink, sort of the most body was the richest. So it's always gonna take from the loosest, poorest man.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, he would just slip that in every once in a while. Fun. No, he was very. Even though it's not overt, he was very engaged, with politics, philosophy, world events. That always came up. He always talked about that. So there's the viscosity. But what Krishna, I believe, is like his big contribution in my mind is the plate, the development of the sculptural plate. Again, like not that he was the only one doing that, but this idea, if you made the plate dimensional, 3 dimensions, it started going below the surface, really gouging it out, carving it, making these canyons and cavities, that there would be all these other areas for the ink to settle, to go. So when you start using rollers on the top of a plate, if you put a roller over the entire plate, the whole top of the plate is going to be that color, And so when he would talk about this, and I talk about this with my students, you lose all the whites. There's no white anymore. And so all the contrast is reduced, and like everything gets heavy. So how do you bring the whites back, or how do you distribute the colors on the plate? What he started using was multiple rollers with different densities. It's called durometer in printmaking, so that one's a hard roller, one's a medium roller, one's a very soft roller. And his plates are dimensional. So the hard roller only touches the surface, the medium roller goes into the medium depths, and then the soft roller can go into the deepest cavities. And so what I loved about his philosophy in terms of the plate making, he's taking printmaking, he's looking at all the different technical aspects of printmaking, and he's thinking about the plate like a relief, like a woodcut or a lino cut or some kind of a sculpture. He's using intaglio, because he's putting ink on the plate. He's using silkscreen because he's using this idea of stencil and blocking out and changing where the inks go. And he's also using lithography in some sense, because lithography is playing around with oil and water, which is essentially viscosity. So he's like combining every aspect of printmaking into one area. And so it's very dynamic. And what I love about it is that any of those sort of pathways can be explored. If you if I like stencils more, if I like, it just really opens up all these avenues for exploration. So it's an etching plate, but it's kind of like it's like this, all the printmaking areas combined, and you can take it anywhere you want. it's very, very dynamic in my mind.
Oh, I agree with you. The thing that strikes me about the plates that's so unusual, well, there's a lot of things about them that are unusual, but usually the surface is kind of ends up being the majority of the plate. But with him, there's hardly any surface, really.
Yes, I mean that's a very good point. I mean, he said that most historically the plate was thought of as like a piece of paper,
Yeah.
and you'd write on it. And he said what he started thinking about it was, and you know, his crowd he'd always call, is that it had different layers. There's multiple pages that you could explore, and you know, we don't. We'll talk. We could talk a little bit, but you know, he really was a sculptor when he came into printmaking. He studied with Henry Moore and Marino Marini in Italy, and he was really involved with sculpture. So it's not a mystery that when he saw the plate and all these sculptural tools, and Hayter was using a lot of burins and gouges. It's not too far of a stretch to say, oh, he started thinking about the plate as a sculpture. But what he did was with the sculpture was because of this viscosity development at the same time, there was this opportunity for the two to converge, you know, color printing, experimental plate making, and they all kind of came together at once for him. And he said it really just, you know, it was like the place where everything that he wanted to do could occur, you know.
The thing that I'm thinking back to all the works that I saw on the wall at the print center, and you know, I hope all you guys got to see the show because it was so beautiful. But like the imagery, they're so lacking in a defined line, that design of any kind. I mean, it's like almost like a pointillist or an impressionist picture, and there's just all of these kind of fingers of lines that waft in and out, and I wonder how predictable did he know what he was going to get when he stopped carving? Do you know what I mean? I mean, like,
Yeah,
he's doing a landscape and there's a sense of a landscape, but like, you can't really plan for what's going to happen when the rollers drop into the caverns.
that's an excellent question. I mean, my sense is like, you know, he has a general direction he wants to go. Because again, this is what came out in his teaching. He would talk about content, the content that you choose. He would say, almost like he said, it doesn't really matter, but it's your engagement with it. You know, how do you engage with it? Like, what are you trying to kind of express, or what are you exploring? So he told me this story. It kind of transcribed it in the essay I wrote, but it's in his viscosity book, and I've seen it a number of places about his experience where he went to Spain, and he was, you know, he said, I was a younger person. I was trying to find my way. I was, you know, in it with Hayter and printmaking, but I was still, you know, trying to figure out how I wanted to go about it. And he went to Spain, and he said he was by the ocean, and he just started contemplating a fish, he said. And I don't know if he had, you know, just seen a lot of fish, but anyway, he was sitting and he was contemplating a fish and how it takes its form. Why does it take the form that it takes? And he started thinking about all the forces that are on a fish, the water and the tides and the gravity. And then he started thinking about how the fish exerts itself. And like, why does the fish stop, you know, at that particular shape, you know? And so it's an interesting, I know people who are in biology are trying to figure this out as scientists. Like, you know, why do our cells just stop and it's an eye, you know, or you know, so, anyway, so he started thinking about this, and he said he went back to the studio and he started exploring this idea of things coming into formation based on these forces. And he said that once he had that idea, he transferred to the actual materials. So you say all these materials, they have forces, they have personalities, they have their own desires, and you know, and they're putting their influence on you and the outcome of the image. So in his mind, it was these images are coming into being through him making them, but also all the other forces that are on him. So that's why he was such a proponent of engaging with materials, because he was like, the more you understand them and know them and work with them, you know, the more you can participate in them. It's not just, that's why he was against the master idea, because it was like, the master's like, I know these things and I'm going to make them do what I want, versus somebody's like, I'm participating in the outcome. And so I think that's why viscosity is so perfect for him, because it's literally the same thing. You put these rollers over and you're not exactly sure what's going to happen. And, you know, voila, there you have this image, and you're like, that's wonderful, you know, and it's partly your doing and it's partly the dynamic of the rollers, and it's partly the dynamic of the viscosity, but the end result is everybody participating, you know, all the materials and your sense of being and what you're trying to accomplish. So I think that's why all the images kind of follow that philosophy. They all are kind of coming into being and do, you know, at some point are galvanized as a print, but that's not necessarily their end. You know, they could keep going in a way, you know. And it's probably why when they put the show together, they realized, oh, he had done a lot of different proofs and done all those series. He actually worked on this series in the 80s called The Great Clown. It's this massive plate. When I first saw it, I was like, how is this even rolled? You know, I was a graduate student, but he found out it was 2 plates. And so I just couldn't even imagine. But he said one summer, they just printed it and printed it and printed it, and they just made hundreds of prints, all different variations. And he said some Swedish collector got interested in it and bought them all, made a book. So there's a book at the show of all the prints. Not all of them, but, you know, 100 or something.
That's a lot.
And literally everyone's different. So you look at him, it's like, what is the one, right? And it's like, there is no one, absolute. He did edition his work, but it really, and he said, oh, he would always promote, and I think this was mainly because of the printmaking industry. He'd be like, oh, you can repeat it, it's repeatable. But I don't think it wasn't ever really about that, you know. It was about exploring materials and see what happens. Right. Like he even said, he said this so many times, and I just loved it. It just, what I love about, to me personally, what I loved about Krishna so much is that he had this way of making everything seem so possible. And he'd be like, just do it, you know, like, it wasn't like, so anything, even viscosity, that was like something that seems really complex. He's like, oh, it's nothing. It's just some rollers and some ink, you know? And I just thought that was such a beautiful way of thinking about the world. It's just like, you just have to participate in it, and what happens, happens. You know, it's not like you're an innocent bystander, but like you're a participant in it, you know? And so he would talk about how he grew up in this small little village in southern India. He's like, and this is literally this is his biography. He would say, I grew up in a small village in India. Somehow I walked out. Yeah. And that's it. And he said, I went on my little journey. And so he was very humble about like what he did, and just was saying, I just did my little piece, you know, but it was my journey. And then he would say to the students, I'm showing you the ABCs. It's up to you to do what you want. So he always was very leery about like, oh, this is like a galvanized system, and this is how viscosity works, you know. And that's why he said he was reluctant to even write the book, but he did. And was that it was something that was in flux.
Yeah, it's a framework, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, it's a framework, but this idea that it's one thing. Yeah. Obviously, you can bracket it, and it's a number of things that are used. Not everything is viscosity printmaking, but the again, like what I was saying, it was like the philosophy of saying like, let's be open, let's see what happens, let's be experimental, you know, this kind of approach.
It's such a particular mindset that I really appreciate. It's a very sort of utopian thinking that the materials are participating, and, you know, the air that's around or whatever it is, the mind of the artist, the hand, it all comes together in this magical moment of creativity. And it's really lovely. So you're teaching now at NYU still?
Yes, I teach. I'm an adjunct, so I teach at a few schools and do some workshops here and there. But yes, been teaching for a while.
Do you approach it as a Krishna acolyte, as it were?
Definitely, because of my experience with him, working in the studio, co-teaching with him, I definitely incorporated lots of his approaches. I mean, I think the core thing is that, again, like the presenting printmaking as a dynamic medium that doesn't have a set endpoint. Like, it can be whatever you want. And also, I remember when students would be working on a plate, and he would say to them, you know, you have to listen to the plate. What does the plate want to do? So when you were asking about his work and like, did he really know what it was going to look like? I think the answer is in there, which is no. He would try to respond to what was happening and listen to it. And I think that's why, maybe I'm just thinking about this right now, is that through the proofing process in printmaking, where you can make a print, see what it looks like, change the plate, go back and forth, I think it allows more of that sort of growth through the process in a way, because you have that record of what's happening. Whereas when you're making a painting, you know, you keep painting over what you just had, and you kind of forget about what was there. And so you just have that sort of like experience of time lapse where you're making it, printing it, proofing it, going back, and responding to the print, changing the print. And so, he would just say, you have to listen. You have to listen to the plate. And what does it want? And I mean, personally, I connected to that. I try to incorporate that in my teaching, which is, content is important. It's all important. He would talk about this all the time. But your engagement is really what the important part is. And however you can connect. And I think the viscosity printing allowed that. It would be like this full engagement with materials. It's like a full-on engagement. If you ever went to one of his classes, everybody's participating, everybody's printing, super communal, like super supportive, And so it was like that whole experience, lends itself to that philosophy of the process and the other forces that are there,
As you were talking, I kept flashing back to the plate. There's a couple, I think there's 2 plates in the show that you can look at. Of course, I want to be able to pet it.
Yeah.
And feel exactly how deep it all goes. But Sarah also borrowed from Judy, Krishna's widow, his Dremel kit, basically, which was completely crazy and wonderful. But it made me think he's directly carving into the plate as opposed to Hayter, who would have done open biting.
Yeah.
To get to those depths.
I mean, he did. I was with him much later in his life, so I don't know what he did for most of his plates. But I knew the few plates that I saw, a lot of times he would start with an acid etching of the image, of the foundation image, that if you look at any of his plates, they'll probably, if you saw that first print, it would still be there, And then he would proceed to carve it and gouge it with all these machine tools. He did do some open bites and aquatints, but a lot of it was the machine tool. And so they had the ability to remove a lot of material pretty quickly so that you get these sculptural. And then he really developed, instead of the deep bite, which has these sort of sharp edges, and if you look at a lot of viscosity prints, it has this sort of ring around. That's because of the deep bite. So he started doing these slopes, these gradients. If you like, I have some pictures that I took when I made the video.
Oh, that would be awesome.
We could give it to you, but they're close-ups to see these gradients and these slopes and these different textures, and they all like catch the ink in just very unique ways.
I think that's what gets so confusing. Like I was coming at it from the Hayter angle, which was definitely this deep bite with the canyon wall and the edge, and it's intaglio ink, so you get this outline, and that all made really a lot of sense. And then I look at Krishna's prints, I'm like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah,
because it looked like there must have been 6 colors. Like, how many rollers are we doing, and what's sticking where? And I mean, it's so confounding.
It really is. I mean, so we could probably talk about it forever. It's like, but could you really understand what's happening? And I think it's just a matter of thinking about, like, again, like the plate is layers and the ink is settling in different places and all these textures, just the way a roller and the ink sits on the roller and the way it responds to the surface that it's touching is just going to give you like a whole myriad of outcomes. And if you change the color of the rollers and how they mix, then you get even more outcomes. So it really is kind of exponentially more possibilities than one plate, one color, and then that's the outcome.
And I hadn't really thought about him using stencils either, which makes sense if you have sort of bursts of, color in one area but not another. But
yeah.
I never considered the stencil on those.
Well, he even came up with this idea. It's called contact. So you just roll out a slab of ink on the glass, and then you take the plate and you put it face down and you just pound the back of it. And whatever the high points are, the color sticks to. So there's a couple prints where they just have these yellow dots on the surface, and that's contact.
Jesus.
And he said that a lot of times. He said that every play for him was an exploration of trying something different. So yes, they have a similarity. Yes, he's using viscosity, but in his mind, what he was doing was like, oh, let me try this, machine head. Let me try this way. Or he was in Wisconsin for a little bit on a visiting artist thing, and the person wanted him to do photo etching. So he's like, okay. So that's the one of Apu crawling.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, I'll try that. So he was very open to all these different experiments. The through line is viscosity, meaning multiple rollers over a single plate. And then the outcome is, a full color print with just a single plate.
I spent a lot of time looking at a lot of work by various members of the atelier over the last 10, 15 years. And I think for me, his are the most, back to the word confounding. Like I just could never quite figure out how the hell he did it.
Yeah. I mean, I actually just saw a student at school, and then they had gone to the class. They had gone to the show, and they were talking to me about it. And they said, "Oh, the video! I like the video." They said, "Could you make a video about how he made the plates or explain that?" And I said, "Well, it's pretty straightforward. He had the machine tools." And he's like, "No, I can't. I still can't quite understand it." So, because I was around it, it seems pretty straightforward to me, relatively. But the plate making. But yeah, that's equally as experimental. And I think it doesn't get as much attention as the actual like sort of rollers and viscosity. But it really, like this workshop I just taught, I said, if you have an absolutely flat plate and you roll 3 rollers over the top, where are they all going? One's just going one over the top of the other. So you're either going to get just the one color where they all mix, or you're just going to get the one color where they didn't mix, But there's not going to be any variations. There's not going to be difference. The only way you can have that is by having a sculptural plate or, stencils or some way of distributing the colors in different areas. If you think about color separation, the traditional one, we have 4 plates. You could just think about the different levels of different plates that kind of stacked up on each other. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those techniques. Until you actually do it, it's going to remain fairly abstract. In a way, it's like anything. I don't know how to play violin, and it all seems a mystery to me,
And even watching it doesn't
I'm
make
sure
it
an
happen.
expert is like, yeah, it's no problem.
Yeah.
You just
blow
do
right
it.
here.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. But in terms of the teaching, I guess what I was getting at was with Krishna, he just would give all the students agency over their own direction and encourage that and just say, it's your way, it's your path, he'd always talk about how there's all, again, like these forces, your parents and society and this and that. And he goes, you have to figure out a way to, find your own way. And he said, if you could build that inner strength, he would talk about, if any of these storms come by or things, you can keep going because you have that inner strength and a determination of what you want to accomplish. That was the important message that he would try to give. So, you were doing viscosity, you were doing printing, but it was really encouraging students to develop their own philosophy to life, And he would talk about his, and again, from my experience, he would talk about his philosophy, but he was always very aware of not saying, this is the way. He would just be like, this is the way I did it. This is what happened to me, and you'll find your own way.
You live part-time in Maine.
Yeah, I mean, I used to spend a lot of time. I would go in the summers. I just had this experience, nothing I did, but my dad's best friend had gotten this property in Maine, this small island, and I would stay there in the summers. It was no electricity, running water, just totally drop off the grid, and it was quite amazing. So that's the main connection. My dad's from New Hampshire and spending a lot of time in New England my whole life. So that's the main connection.
Where'd you grow up?
I was born in New York City, but grew up I say reluctantly, somebody took me to New Jersey for 15 years. No, I shouldn't be. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan, so.
So I don't mean to laugh, but I grew up in Connecticut, right outside of the city, so I know exactly what you're saying.
As soon as I became an adult, I was like, I gotta, live in the city, or I have to just be in the middle of nowhere. So that's how I've been kind of approaching it. I think it's just because the suburbs are neither one. And I've been in the East Village for, oh my gosh, the last 30 years.
Oh, wow. Wow. When you were at Oberlin, you were a studio major?
No, I wasn't.
No surprise at Oberlin.
Yeah. It wasn't a big art department, and they were pretty focused on silkscreen, which I feel like that's probably why I ended up going to print. But I don't know. I was in a liberal arts school, and I just thought that I should. I didn't see it as the major I would follow. Somehow I majored in anthropology.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I don't even know if it's a subject these days. It's pretty antiquated. Even at the time, it was definitely seen as, very antiquated and Eurocentric.
Yes, that's kind of like art history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but that was good also to know you kind of have that. What I really responded to was just these structures and these systems that we make as humans. I mean, I just found it fascinating. And I took an intro to anthropology class, and I thought, wow, this is really fascinating to me, and got really thinking about all these things we do as humans and all these things we've created. And, there were structuralists and functionalists and all this stuff. And I just found it really interesting. And, that's what and by next thing I know, it was a junior or whatever I had to declare. So I was like, let's do it, But I took a lot of class. I took calculus and I took physics. And I remember being in the physics class and the students are like, so you're a physics major? And I was like, no. And they're like, why are you in this class? It really was challenging, I have to say. But I felt like I just wanted to learn a lot of stuff, have a lot of experiences. I played in a band. I played, and so still together with these guys. It's great.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Your band is Oberlin guys?
Yeah, we're still together.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, we've never put anything out officially. It's a ongoing, just experience.
What kind of music?
It's rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's fun. I joke about cool. People like, how come you didn't do more with music, like professionally? I said, look, I wanted to be an artist, and I said, there's only so much failure I can take.
Oh.
No, but I'm just saying, like, being an artist is very challenging, and everything is challenging. I'm not trying to say that anything's more challenging than that, but it's not a clear pathway, and so that's I decided to put the majority of my energy on art making.
When you were doing your MFA at NYU, did you think teaching's my thing, or was that just sort of like the way to keep doing art?
Well, actually, it was not what I was thinking about at all. But Krishna actually, he really encouraged everybody. He thought it was very important, and he would always say at the end of his class, he's like, Paul Klee would talk about teaching at the Bauhaus and how he learned 10 times more than the students, and he just thought it was very important. And I remember specifically, it was like 5 or 6 years after I graduated, and I was printing one of his editions. It was Sorrow and Violence. I was printing it in Brockburn's studio. It was the summer. It was hot as anything. And I was printing this viscosity full color, 100 prints. And a call came, and Blackburn's studio at the time, it was on 17th Street. It was really massive. And they said, Krishna's on the phone. I walked all the way to the office. It was like late July. And Krishna said, so one of the adjuncts had left, and he needed to replace him pretty quickly. And he said, "I want you to teach the class." And I said, "I can't. I don't know anything. I just didn't feel like I could do it, or didn't know anything about teaching." So, but he really encouraged me and gave me that amazing opportunity, which I'm still very thankful for, that I have that. Or that I did that, I also was an art handler for many, many years.
Oh, okay.
I was an itinerant art handler for 20 years. That's how I made most of my living. Worked at the Guggenheim, all sorts of places.
Yes. I've run into a lot of you over my museum career.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was fun. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Touching all the good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah.
Yeah.
Meeting a lot of artists. I mean, I remember meeting Rauschenberg at the Guggenheim. They had a huge retrospective, and Giorgio Armani. And everybody was scratching their head like, why is the Guggenheim having an Armani show? But we did, or they did. Yeah, I got to. Plus, they had opened up the Bilbao Museum, so I went there 5 or 6 times.
Oh wow,
amazing.
I've never been.
Yeah, it's incredible. But also, everybody who's on that circuit is artists, and so most of the time you're just talking about art and talking about the art you're hanging, and it's nice to be around that.
I feel like I knew when I was at the National Gallery years ago, there was a woman who was working in the library, and she was like reshelving books or something. And I knew she was of a certain age and that she was smart as shit and all that stuff. And somebody finally explained to me that she was an artist also, and that she was not interested in a job that would tax her brain because she wanted to devote all of that energy, mental energy, to the art making. And I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I think that's why I like teaching, is because you stay engaged with making. And then you have to, if you're going to teach, obviously, you have to understand how you think about it, how you want to present it. And, it's like we were just talking about earlier, a lot of that I got from Krishna. And I think what Krishna also was an expert in is like, everybody loved his classes, And so, I participated in him as a graduate student, but also when I helped him co-teach. And I'm looking as an observer. I was like, what is it about the class that that is so engaging, and people want to take it over and over again, and you can't quite put your finger on it. It's definitely Krishna. There's something about him. If you ever, I miss him so much, and it's like just being around him, talking with him, he would just immediately, you'd go take from the simplest thing and he would just bring it to a philosophical level, pretty quickly. And want to take it there and talk about it on that level. And that's why I was saying, like, in terms of the viscosity, technically, he definitely could talk about that and could explain it, but he would very quickly say, it's nothing, it's just some ink, and then want to talk about the philosophy or whatever was on his mind about art making, creativity. He was endlessly fascinated about how we'll just never know what all this is, but we'll keep trying, Like, that's what I called my essay. It was like, we don't know. We want to find out.
Yeah.
And he would say that, he was saying that endlessly. He would just say to me, he would say, like, subject matter, we don't know, and we want to find out.
Yeah.
In his mind, was what was driving artists, or all of us. My niece is a biology scientist, a postdoc at this point, and I'm sure that's what's driving her, is the curiosity to find out, and artists are doing it, and everybody's doing it on different levels and different ways. But that's what he would try to instill into his students, was that if you had this curiosity, then that would take you really, really far, like that would be the self-motivating driver for you.
Yeah.
That's why, again, he wouldn't dictate subject matter, you just do whatever you want, he didn't care. He never would give a prompt or subject matter ever. But students loved his class. This is what I'm saying. Like, and then if you saw it, it was like, what's actually happening? Like, what's actually being taught, right? He didn't really give structured assignments, and it was like, just basically make a bunch of work, and at the end we'll have a critique, And
it worked.
It totally worked.
Wow.
But it's an atelier model. It's like you're saying. It's like the Hader model. It's like, show up. And a lot of art schools have this, they have this model, like, just let's get together, let's be there, let's work, and something's going to happen, But I think for him, it was like creating this environment where that was possible. And it sounds like that's what Atelier 17 was, too. It was like everybody was coming, and Blackburn it sounds like a very similar model. Like, let's create a space where people can work, and there's be energy and support and community, and then out of that, something's going to happen,
The parallel I'm drawing is to my friend Drew, who does history prints with us. All of you guys know this.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And he teaches an intro to printmaking at MICA. And I go down and I do the, end of semester kind of, not critiques directly, but sort of show and tell, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And he gets amazing work out of the students, and he has the same devoted kind of following that Krishna sounds like he did. But I think it's for different reasons. I think True's magic is that he expects a lot. I think he does do, people have to do calligraph for this one or whatever it is. But there's something about the same kind of curiosity, but directed in a slightly different way, and it still gets really good work out of the students. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, not to say that he didn't give assignments, but he would start, and this is something else I use a lot. It's like he would start with the foundational aspects of everything. So it's an advanced class, but he wouldn't just jump right into, full advanced viscosity. He would just start. He'd always talk about how the line creates, form, and the basic ideas of art making. So everybody would just start with a line, black and white plate, and just develop it, So it wasn't like there wasn't structure and sequencing, pedagogical sequencing, whatever you want to call it. But it was just more that there was an openness to subject matter, approach. It wasn't judgmental. It was like, what are you trying to do, And this is 30 years ago, 20 years ago. This is before all the, the current vibe that, anything is, I call it, anything is good. There's no bad, there's no bad now. So I'm just saying, but he was ahead of that. I'm sure other people were, but I'm just saying my experience. He was way ahead of that. And I think that's, again, why the viscosity, I think, is so key, is that it provided that structure of exploration, So if you just say to somebody, explore, like, I don't know, what. But if you say, okay, here's a bunch of things that we're going to structure for you, and then within those, you can explore.
Right.
And again, I think that's why the viscosity really worked well for teaching and exploration. A lot of people say, well, what do you, like they ask me or other people like, well, how much viscosity do you use? Like, what is, like, what do you continue on with? And I'm like, if you looked at my work, I haven't been using a full Krishna viscosity kind of setup for a little bit, but everything I'm doing is derived from what I learned from him, and the approach is coming out of that experience. So it was like I would never have made the work I'm making, I'm sure, had I not studied with him. So again, that's what he really wanted. He wanted people to just say, how do you want to go about it? What's your approach?
Do you have a lot of Krishna Reddy prints in your collection?
I printed 3 of his, so I have those. And then when he found out I was an art handler, I would help him pack things and go help him. Then I helped him. He did a second edition of his book. But I loved it. I loved it. He would call and he would say, Mark, is there any way on Thursday you could come? And I love it because I love to be there. It was just incredibly positive experience, fulfilling. Just to be there, talk with him. Sometimes he'd be looking for a print, and he had all these flat files of prints, and he'd take them out. He had these kind of old school print folders, and portfolios, marble paper, and he'd open them up, and he'd be like, "Oh, when did I do this?" And then he would look at it, and he'd talk about what he had done and what he had tried to learn from that print, and so it was a very amazing experience to have. And then seeing how he thought about printing and how he thought about making the plate. So we would make the proof, and then he's like, I have to work on the plate a little more, and then come back, So he gave me a couple prints. He gave me a print called Insect, which I just cherish. It's one of his first or second viscosity prints. And there's a white line in it, and there's early prints. And so we were talking about the white and the rollers, and a lot of people are confused by that. It's like, what it is it's so deep. The etching is so deep that no ink or rollers can even touch that. So it's just literally the white of the paper. But that was always the challenge. If you're going to have all these rollers and the plate is filled with ink, you still have to have some lights and whites. So he found a lot of different ways of bringing that back in. One was the deep gouge, but the other one, which developed, I don't know exactly when it developed, but it's what I show in the video. It's like, instead of using the ink for the first roller, so you have that hard roller that goes over all the surface. Now, if that is a traditional etching plate and you print it in black and white, that surface would be white because there would be no ink on it. You clean off any ink and that would be white in the print. Now, if you put a roller over the top of that, that's going to be the color of the roller. What Krishna's genius is instead of using color, he used transparent base ink. It's ink with no color that he rolls over the top. So everybody's like, what does that mean, right? That means that area is covered with a clear, transparent ink. When you roll a second roller over it with that viscosity philosophy, it will not stick to where that transparent is. So those whites are maintained throughout the rolling process.
Okay.
So the reason his prints are so luminous and they have the lightness and the whiteness is because of this transparent roller over the top. And I show that in the video. If people are confused about what I'm talking about, you can go back and look at the video. I just take a little roller and I roll a little bit of clear ink on the glass. And then I roll a yellow roller over the whole thing. And the yellow only sticks on either side of that strip of clear ink. You say, what happened? Well, that clear ink is on the yellow roller, on the roller, not on the glass. So anyway, it's his way of bringing back the lights, right? And so all his prints are they shine. And if you don't use that transparent roller, everything's going to be heavy and full of ink and solid, And that's not to say that that's not successful. It just means that you lose that sort of the way like a traditional print looks.
So the transparent ink would get rolled on first?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a roller first. And it creates a mask again. It's like a mask. It's like if you use Photoshop and you had a mask, it's exactly the same.
Okay.
It's literally the same thing. And all you're trying to do is just say, how is it possible to distribute ink of different colors on a single plate? Right. That's all we're trying to do, is that, and some people use alu pupe, that's using multiple etching inks, stencils, that's what Hayter used a ton of, so you're blocking certain areas out and rolling, viscosity, but it's all about like how, Chincolet, It's all like, oh, I have one plate, but I want more than one color, you know? So the funny thing is, it's like he said, where everybody was trying to simplify color printing at the time in the 50s, but they were trying to make it more spontaneous, meaning like the multiple plate printing. I mean, I only do a little bit of it because I can't even deal with it, you know? I mean, I don't mean I can't deal with it, but I just am not as interested in that traditional process. But, and I love it. I respect it completely. But, so it's like, how can I build up these colors? So he said everybody was trying to do that. Like, how can we build up multiple colors on one plate so we don't have to do the 4 plates, the arduous, you know, commercial way. So this was just another way to do that. It's literally just another technical way of achieving that.
Amazing. It's amazing. Thank you for talking it all through with me. I appreciate it because I feel like, I mean, I can describe it sort of, but you have such deep knowledge that is much more knowledgeable than me.
The Print Center is an amazing place. I mean, I can't tell you how much respect I have for them, and Sarah did an amazing job. And it's well past due. It's through time, you know, that I'm so glad that it's up and people are seeing it. And the students from NYU have seen it, are really loving it. And, you know, these are young kids, and they're responding to it. And I just like, what is it about it? And they're like, they can't quite put their finger on it, you know? It's kind of like what you were saying, like, I think part of it is it's just like hard to pinpoint what it is, right? It's like, and then I think that was part of the curatorial challenge is like, how do you contextualize this? What is it? Does it fit into any kind of like timeline? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I mean, because I'm so mired in Atelier 17, it fits right in, right? But
yeah. But I mean, like if you zoom out of Atelier 17, you know.
I mean, it's totally in league with the New York Abstract Expressionist School. And yeah, so it makes sense in that way because it's abstract but not abstract at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I mean, to me, it fits right into the whole New York 50s, 60s, 70s thing for sure.
Definitely, because you're an art historian.
Well.
And print expert.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
It's all accumulated knowledge. That's what I tell people.
I know. Exactly. Right. That's all it is. It's not like I'm an expert. I just happen to spend a lot of time with this.
Right, exactly.
You know, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, Krishna's he's kind of like this bright, shining light in the firmament, you know? Like he lived his life with such openness and hope and generosity. I think he's, a true a model for all of us, really.
I know. I'm glad you said that because, he would always say like, oh, you meet somebody, instead of just saying, I know who they are, you try to say, can I know who they are? He was against all these ways we categorize in a way, and it was more like, could you be open? And again, like that's what I was saying about the art making. It was like the same approach. And I think that's what's so beautiful about it. It wasn't like he just had an art approach. He had a life approach, and it was consistent across the board. So it wasn't just in art, I think about things this way. And that's why I was saying, I just loved, spending time with him because it was so refreshing for me, and then you go out into the other world, and, there's not a lot of that, there's that exists, but like you said, that hope and like always just endlessly saying there's
the curiosity.
Yeah,
right?
there's always a way. He would always be so down, like when you sort of see the negative side of humanity, but he would just like, well, there's a way though. Maybe there's a hope, and that is like so needed. It's just beyond needed. And in the classroom, the community, his loft with Judy, it was a community. The Blackburns is a community. It's just a wonderful. It's when I got involved with the show, it'd been a little bit of time, obviously, since I'd seen him, and I definitely think about him a lot. It was just so great for me to reconnect with his life and his thinking, and it's just been this wonderful year of connecting with that and talking to people, and I'm just so glad that there's been a lot of response to what he had to say. What he tried to do.
An overdue show that is very welcome. You're very fortunate to have him in your mind and in your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beyond.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking to me today about Krishna Reddy. He's one of my superheroes, and I'm just so glad we were able to do this.
Yeah, me too.
Hey, thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Platemark with my guest, Mark Johnson. I'd like to thank Mark for coming on the show and really helping us understand what is so special about Krishna Reddy and his ethos and his way of approaching life. Really inspiring. Thank you, Mark. Also, a thank you, as usual, to Dan Fury of Extension Audio for being my sound guy. Thanks, Dan. And also to Michael Diamond for the use of his original music. Thanks, Uncle Michael. And lastly, one to Skip Barnhart and Lee Turner, who sent me sounds from their studios that make up the soundscape at the top and bottom of each episode. As I said at the top, images we talk about are over in the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. Over there, you can also hit the support and donate button and help me keep the lights on. All right, we'll see you next time.